it's my passion to help people get into fitness and start their journey. And a lot of like showing them their potential is, building that confidence that they can do it. So I think that's always step number one is building the internal confidence and the mindset that you can do this, and then you can do greater things, and you can keep just progressing higher and higher. But it definitely starts with like being confident in themselves, that they can achieve more than they think.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. Good morning, Tone.
Morning, Bear.
Today, we are really excited to have Katie Knight on the podcast. Katie is a total badass, is an ultra marathoner, hybrid athlete, coach, model, and won her first title at the World's Toughest Mudder back in 2021. She's competed and earned all kinds of titles in strength and endurance sports, including the GoRuck Games, the Spartan Ultra World Championships, Hyrox events, and swimming competitions. And today we just want to get into a little bit of her journey, kind of as a competitive strength and endurance athlete. I think there's a lot we can extract from this. And prior to all this, Katie was a four-sport athlete in high school and also a Division I hockey player. So comes with quite a background in human performance, and just overall a total badass. So Katie Knight, welcome to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, as we kind of introed, quite the background. So I guess from the beginning, four-sport athlete, what led you down the path of kind of being a competitive athlete, it kind of pursuing so many different disciplines?
Yeah, so growing up, it was all about athletics. So I'm one of 6 kids. We all played sports. My parents coached me. My mom coached me in basketball. My dad coached me in hockey all throughout, childhood and up until college, essentially. So was always pretty dedicated to fitness and sports. My mom and my aunt had a fitness company. So they taught like musical aerobics way back in the day in like the 80s and 90s. So I would say fitness has always been very important in my family.
Nice. And after college, you're a Division I athlete playing hockey. When did you kind of get that itch to kind of pivot and go after these crazy endurance sports?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right after college, I got into like CrossFit. My mom got us all into CrossFit. So I did that for a couple years competitively. And then some buddies of mine at the gym were doing the rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon, which is 50 miles over 10,000 feet of gain. And I was like, I want to do that. I don't think I've ever run more than a half marathon at that point. And so that was like kind of something I wanted to get into. I knew I had like an endurance background a little bit, and I was capable of doing so. So kind of got into ultra marathons, started running trail ultras, and then some of my friends did Spartan races at a pretty high level. And so my first Spartan race was in Tahoe in 2021, 2 months before I won World's Toughest. So I went and did that, and then that qualified me for Spartan Ultra World Champs, which is a 24-hour obstacle course race. And that was in the mountains of Telluride. And so I did that. I took second on course. And then a month later, I did World's Toughest Mudder. So it's kind of just like I was all in. And that was my story.
So let me get this straight. Kind of on a whim, you were like, yeah, let's go do that 50-mile canyon run with some friends. It sounds like a good time. And that's what got you hooked in it. Did you have like an endurance background to run that race? I mean, like just to hit a casual 50-mile with 10,000 elevation change, like were you just from your years of training, as an athlete, were you able to just get it done, or did you have to train for that?
I had heard they were doing it probably a couple months before. So I put in some volume, not a whole ton, obviously, in 2 months, but yeah, I don't know. It was just something that I wanted to try and I wanted to do. And I loved it. I loved being outdoors. I loved trail running, which is what I do essentially every day here in Boulder. So yeah, it kind of just like sparked my interest. And from there I was like, yeah, this is cool. I want to do it.
Did that click quick for you as far as that volume of running? I mean, that's a different animal, even as former athletes ourselves. It's one thing even to do a half marathon, but as you start to get above that, I feel like even the systems you're using in your body are very different. Was that something you were able to kind of step into really quick, or did it take I mean, you're really good at it now. Was that something that took a while to really get comfortable, or did it kind of happen naturally?
I would say like building up the muscle strength, because obviously you use different muscles and it's a lot of fatigue on the body. That took a lot of training and building up for it after that first initial one. And then I put in more time on my feet, which makes a huge difference. But yeah, mentally I knew that I would like, that's something I could kind of just jump into and kind of rip my way through, as I've done with most races that I've, never had experience with. I've done swim run world championships, which is, this one's crazy. It's 40 miles of running total and over 6.5 miles of open water swimming. You're swimming in between islands and then getting out and running those islands, off the coast of Sweden. So like, that's something I had never done before. But with a little bit of training and just like the right mindset, I think that really anything's possible.
And did you have any in those early stages that I guess broke you might be a bit of an exaggeration, but that you realized, oh shit, this is like another tier of training in order to get ready for it? Are there any in your early history when you started kind of getting into these that you can recall that yeah, broke you a little bit?
Yeah, I mean the 24-hour races, that's a whole different ball game. Those are pretty tough to conquer. The one that was in Telluride, it was like middle of the night, and you essentially start at 9,000 feet and you climb to 11 each lap. So there's 6-mile loops, 20 obstacles a lap. And I was climbing the mountain on one of the laps I was on, and I was like, wow, this is tough. Like, this is going to take some extra mental grit to get to the top of this mountain on this lap. So there's always things like that come up in races. But yeah, as long as like you're getting some training in, and then obviously today more so like I have like a dedicated coach and like things like that help me get to where I need to be. But like in the beginning, it was kind of just like, let's do this thing.
And when you won the Tough Mudder like World Championship in 2021, how long had you been like competitive in that space?
Let's see, since July, and that was November. So my first Spartan race, like, I mean, I'd been like running and training and mountain biking and, doing CrossFit. So I've been building up, endurance for the last like 2 years, like really dedicated. But my first actual race and then being competitive in that space was a couple months prior.
Okay. And you think when that happened, did you have the realization that, okay, I've kind of found a little bit of my niche? Because
Yeah,
it sounds like
so.
sounds like you definitely doubled down on it. And I guess after that point, did you have a more serious training curriculum that was specific to that craft? And walk us through that. I'm guessing maybe you went out and got a coach and nutritionist and stuff like that. Or maybe you had the background to just figure it out yourself. But walk us through kind of winning it in 2021, realizing, okay, this is my new gig now. And then leveling up to, getting even more crazy event wins and all these wild challenges you were doing.
Yeah, definitely. So it definitely felt like I was, this is something that I really love doing and I'm decently good at it. So let's go from here. I was essentially my own coach. I had some strength coaches here and there after winning World's Toughest. And then recently, within the past like 6 months or so, I got like a running coach, kind of just to level up my game for an upcoming race in February. But yeah, like I definitely doubled down, like you said, and really started training mentally and physically for these big challenges.
And honing in on the mental side, because I think there's so much you can extract from the kind of the mental journey of kind of ultra endurance events like this. It's particularly, the one you talked about, it's the middle of the night. No one's watching you probably, right? That takes a lot of willpower. And that's when those probably voices in your head start creeping in and telling you, hey, why are you doing this? And hey, you can go a little slower, we can walk for a while, that sort of thing. So walk us through kind of your mental journey on becoming mentally stronger. And I don't know if there's anything you've done deliberately when you're not kind of in the arena to help prepare you for those moments when that kind of inner voice comes out. And because I think that applies to life. You don't have to be an ultra marathoner to use those lessons. But curious if you've kind of figured out any tactics that have worked well for you in those moments.
Yeah, for sure. I would say when I first started the sport, so those first couple races, a lot of the motivation for my mental strength and capacity were probably not the most healthy. So they came from a place of like, whether it was anger or spite or, things I was going through in life with relationships. And those can be really, really impactful drivers to be mentally strong and tough. And I've done a lot of research on it, and usually those kinds, like out of anger, those motivators last probably like 5 to 7 years, and then they kind of dwindle, or you just become like a miserable person. And so over the past couple of years, I've really dedicated myself to find more healthy ones. So, internal motivators to make me mentally tough, mentally strong. So like, am I doing these races for me and making myself proud? Sorry, that's Doug.
Oh, you're
Hey,
good.
He's a good another guest.
This is a family program.
Yeah,
We're good with it.
Doug loves to make an appearance on anything I do.
I love that.
He's got a good face for
But
it.
yeah, so that's been kind of a work in progress. And then another thing that's kind of helped me along the way, like with mental toughness is, and I tell clients this all the time, I have them think about something they've gone through in life, whatever that has to do with, whether it's family, jobs, finances, like anything tough they've gone through. And then when they're in the middle of something like a 24-hour race or something, think about how they have overcome that, right? So they're still standing today, they're still running, they're still walking, they're still trying to achieve goals. So like, if you're able to complete things that were tough in your past, like you can get through whatever you're doing now. So you kind of take that energy and you shove it into whatever you're trying to complete. Again, whether that's jobs, trying to get a certain job, or, complete a certain race, or anything in life. I always find that a really good thing to tell clients, and then think myself as well.
And Katie, how did you recognize, because it's interesting you say about kind of the difference between the two types of motivators. We just had Ben Zobrist on the podcast. He was a World Series MVP with the Chicago Cubs, and he literally said almost the same exact words you did, is that after winning World Series MVP, he had a huge burnout stage where he should have been on top of the world, and recognized that actually he was kind of miserable inside. And part of that was that his motivators were almost running from something, as opposed to, like you said, an internal willpower and like just moving towards something because that's what you want to be doing. And we talked through how there is a shelf life, in which you just kind of said in maybe different words, is there's a shelf life to that type of motivation. It works as jet fuel for a while, but it will eventually burn you almost from the inside out. How did you recognize that? Was it a breakdown in your body, or was it something mentally where you realized, oh shit, this may not be sustainable the way I'm going about this?
Right. Yeah, those are all really good points. I think I noticed when I started changing things in my life and things became more positive. So, I got in a new relationship. I surrounded myself with, a loving and supportive community. I got a coach that was just Team Katie all the way. And so when, my life started to shift into a more positive mindset, that kind of took a lot of toll on my performance and how I was able to perform. So I wasn't running angry and mad and, trying to win things to prove a point or prove to somebody that I could. So that's when I kind of noticed, and I noticed I needed to make a shift, and I needed to, turn those motivators internal and find something else to motivate me to win, essentially.
And did that shift happen, Katie? Because now you're becoming a recognizable face. I'm sure you're social, just you in general, you're having a lot more opportunities than you probably had in years past. Did you make that shift before you you started to expand into this space, into the general fitness space? And I ask because that is something I'd be interested in, is like, were you able to stay grounded throughout that? And is that something you still battle with today, is as more opportunity arises? Of course, on paper, that looks great. But that, relating back to that podcast we just had too, Ben, who was the World Series MVP, was like, it ripped him in 700 different directions. And it took him a while to kind of reground himself and say, like, who am I and what the hell do I actually want to be doing? Did you feel those pulls as you've become more and more recognized and started to win some of these bigger events?
Yeah, I would say after my rookie year went really well. You listed all those wins and things that I accomplished. And then after that, it kind of builds the pressure of like, oh, wow, like I need to keep succeeding. I need to keep winning. And then, as like my motivator shifted at the same time, like I would say my 2023 season didn't go exactly how I wanted. So it was it was definitely a hard transition, and kind of broke me a little bit to think about what I want to do and what races I want to do and how I want to accomplish those. And so it has been a journey, especially when there's pressure to, be the best and keep winning and keep running and things like that. And so this whole year, I would say, has been a hard transition, but what's helped keep me grounded is the things I've put in place that are more positive, that are helping me turn those, motivators to be positive and give me energy from that. So again, whether that's my community, my gym community, my relationships, everything like that, that plays a huge difference to my mental health and my mental strength.
Yeah, I love what you said about, just the theme of where your source of motivation was coming from, because I believe that leaning into some of that early motivation to prove someone wrong, or, I think that's a great thing. And I think anyone that needs a kick in the ass, use that, right? Because that's what fueled a lot of me as as a young high school athlete. I had a chip on my shoulder because there were people telling me I couldn't do this and this. And you know what I mean? I said, watch me, I'm going to go live in the weight room and I'm going to eat like a horse. And in 3 years, it's going to be a different story. And that's what happened. So I think that, that can be a good thing, but yes, you don't want to be that person with a chip on your shoulder your whole life. Cause then eventually, and it's like, what's it for? But internalize it and use it. But at some point, it needs to become a bit more nuanced and maybe, from a different kind of spirit. And that's it's cool that you came to that realization. I'm guessing maybe it sounds like in the early days, your source of motivation was that of, I'm going to prove a certain individual or people wrong. Is that fair?
Yep, absolutely.
Do you want to elaborate on that or no?
Yeah, I mean, it was a past relationship where that race and Telluride I was telling you about, climbing that mountain, kind of breaking down halfway up. I had just broken up with a boyfriend, and I was angry. And so all that motivation came from, watch this, right? I'm going to prove you wrong. I can do this without you, without your support, whatever that was. But yeah, that's definitely where it came from.
Nice. Maybe we'll get Taylor.
Yeah, motivators are pretty interesting. So I used to be, actually, before all of this, at a college, I was an elementary school teacher. And so when we work with kids on like what motivates them to do well in school, like all of what we're saying plays into that. So, you can have the motivation to, make your parents proud, or for, certain external accomplishments. But what we really try to train into kids and let them know is that, you're going to go a lot further in life if you're doing this for you. Like you're working hard, you're studying for this test, you're doing all these things to make yourself proud. And I think that people look past that a lot. They're trying to get external validation instead of looking inward, and that's going to take you a lot further in life.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so you were an elementary school teacher. When did you then, was it a slow transition into what you're doing now, or was it kind of a clean cut where you won one of these races and then recognized like, oh, this is what I want to be doing?
Yeah, so I've had quite the career journey. So I was a teacher, and then I realized what makes me happy every day, all day, is fitness. So I became a CrossFit coach. I worked at a pretty big CrossFit box here in Colorado. And from there, I was like coaching, and then I was also training for like CrossFit comps, and then slowly into more so ultra and endurance races. And it was kind of like a clean cut where I was working for Google as a full-time personal trainer and coach. And I just decided that in order to take this more full-time, I needed to cut one of my jobs. And so at that time, I was like essentially doing 4. I was working for brands, I was training, I was an online coach, and I was working for Google. So I had to cut one of them in order to make time to take this really, to the next level. And so I cut that out. And since then, it's been just training full-time.
Do you have any gnarly race stories? Like anything come to mind of when you were just like, holy crap, what am I doing? Like, how did I get here?
Yeah, actually. So, and this is on my social media page, and it's pretty gross, but I was doing 2 back-to-back 50Ks last fall up in Buena Vista in Colorado. So at elevation, and I had just done the swim run world championship. So my feet and toes were already pretty gnarly looking.
And that was the Sweden one, 6.5 mile
that's
plus
the Sweden
40-mile run.
Yep.
Okay.
So my feet probably were not in the most healthy space. And so the first 50K went really well. I got second on course. And then the next day was a lot of climbing. So it was like 8,000 climbing and then just straight down for like 4 to 5. And about, I would say 10 miles into that race, I felt like my toenails detach. So
I've been there.
I'm running.
Not a good feeling.
I still have quite a few more miles to put in, and I'm like eventually just walking the whole thing because like my toes hurt so incredibly bad. And I get to the finish line and the medics come over and things like that. And they're like, we should take these off or they're going to get infected. They don't look great. And so basically right at the finish line, they gave me a couple shots of whiskey. They put in a way too big of a needle for Novocaine in the back of my toe. And then they just tore them straight off.
So you lost.
I have the video of that on my Instagram.
So did you lose every toenail?
Pretty much. I lost my 2 big toenails,
Okay.
which were the most painful. And then quite of the other ones, most of the other ones fell off.
So
Those take a while to come back. Too.
Yeah, they do.
It's a while.
So you were needless to say, you were pumped to put on some high heels to go to to get dressed up, right? How would that gone over? Yeah.
I actually I'd prefer not to have big toenails, especially with running so many miles each week. It's just way better. You don't have to deal with it.
And so back up real quick to the Sweden swim. I'm guessing what was the water temp swimming in that?
We got pretty lucky. I don't know the exact temperature, but it wasn't as cold as previous years.
Okay.
Let me take that squeaker from him.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, that's what I didn't know what that was.
I didn't know what it was either. For the viewers, we have a golden retriever chewing on a squeaky toy we have to address.
I thought it was on our producers end.
He literally won't squeak anything unless I'm on a call. Like he almost knows and then he does it.
Is that an ear of corn squeaky toy?
No, it's not. It's a squirrel.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that's the most Iowa thing I've ever seen, but Katie's from Iowa, so yeah. All right, never mind.
And Katie, are you are you the type of athlete where everything in your day now, especially as you progress to higher and higher levels, are you very, very dialed on diet, on sleep, on recovery? Or we had Ariel Lowen on the podcast. She's a mother, like still finished third in the games this year. And she's not laxed by any means, but comparing her to other high level CrossFit athletes, you scratch your head because she's not doing near the amount of she just doesn't have the time that they have to put into their recovery and things. Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum?
I would probably say in the middle. I think the important thing is consistency and hitting my miles and my training each day. And then other than that, I'm pretty relaxed a little bit. I think when you are so strict and, it's hard to forgive yourself when you don't meet those macros and you don't hit the, training numbers and things like that. Usually before every big race, I'll go out the weekend before and just have a ton of fun with my friends. Because I think it's important to kind of let go sometimes. But otherwise from the day-to-day perspective, it's pretty strict, but nothing that's gonna make me unhappy. I would rather be able to, keep this what I love doing instead of a chore, if that makes sense.
And if there,
go ahead.
Have there been any specific recovery tactics that you've employed? Do you do deep tissue massages weekly? And I guess walk us through that cold tub sauna, anything like that. We've kind of dorked out on that a little bit, and I've recently gotten into the sauna cold tub thing, and I think it really helps. But curious from your community, what you all do that tends to work, because so much of it obviously is recovery, right? Breaking down the muscle and doing all that crazy stuff you all do. You have to recover in between and get stronger. So what are some things you've done on the recovery side?
Yeah, I love an ice bath and sauna session. I think that does wonders for recovery and for your body and for your mind too. So that one is really important to me. I'll get an ice bath every day. Mobility and stretching, that just makes me feel better and also helps my muscles. So those two are pretty essential for me every day. And then just recovering by eating a lot of food is also very helpful.
So you're cold tubbing every day. Do you do it in the morning?
Yep.
Okay. So like first thing
Usually,
you do?
usually when I wake up, the first thing I do is I'll jump in for 3 to 5 minutes, and maybe do that once or twice if I have time. And then sometimes at night, but I like to do like a sauna session more so at night to, help you sleep better.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a savage move. I'm still coming around to that. I got one at the house now, and I have that sauna
Yeah.
too. And I'm more doing them at night, but man, I want to make that the morning routine, like 5:30, and you have like alarm goes off 5:30, and you have 5 minutes to get in the tub, and there's no negotiation. I'm getting around to that, but it's like, man, that's a great way to set the tone, and obviously, the physical and mental benefits too.
Well, kind of like it wakes you up as well. So I find it hard to take ice baths at night because it kind of, it wakes you up. But yeah, when you do it in the morning right away, you kind of get it over with as well.
Okay. And what about like deep tissue stuff?
Yeah, so I see a PT and do like massage body work, probably like every other week or so. Yeah.
Anything for sleep hygiene?
I don't think so. I think I sleep pretty well. I sleep usually like 8 to 9 hours a night.
Katie, something I'd love to dig into a little more, just because you're an individual that pushes this to the extreme, is kind of the human body's ability to adapt. And kind of it's interesting because like the word overtraining gets thrown out a lot. And of course, I think given wherever you're at on the training spectrum, burying yourself into the ground certainly is not the answer. But you, and I know you do a lot of coaching, it's like, how do you go about kind of scaling people and getting them to see potentially that, guys, you have so much more potential and so much more capacity than you could ever imagine. That doesn't mean you're going to do it tomorrow, but like, let's develop a program and some systems to maybe get you there in the next 2 or 3 years. And of course, for each individual, that looks different. But how do you kind of approach that as somebody who's expanded your bandwidth so far, when you're maybe working with somebody that even getting in the gym 2 to 3 times a week is challenging?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I was, being a full-time trainer and coach at places like Google or Oracle, like corporate health and wellness, you have a lot of that. So you have people who have never even walked into a gym, people who have never done a squat before. And those are my favorite people to work with and train. There's not a lot of ego. I've worked at CrossFit, helping people set PRs and things like that. But it's my passion to help people get into fitness and start their journey. And a lot of like showing them their potential is, building that confidence that they can do it. So I think that's always step number one is building the internal confidence and the mindset that you can do this, and then you can do greater things, and you can keep just progressing higher and higher. But it definitely starts with like being confident in themselves, that they can achieve more than they think.
Yeah, and it feels like to me, even just at the gym this morning, sometimes I shake my head, and I'm not judging them, but some trainers, it makes you scratch your head when you see individuals like yourself that are at a very high level of fitness. You know how to scale things in a way that's reasonable and create a program so that that individual that maybe has never been into a gym, you're not going to have them back squatting on week one. It's like, hey, let's at least get you moving a little bit, get you to recognize what it's like to have your heart rate elevated. But Bear and I go to the same gym in the morning, and it's a nice gym, but it's not like a private little gym. There's a ton of people there, and I will see all the time just individuals that can't even move, and the trainer has them doing, like I said, back squats or deadlifts in their form. It's like I'm happy that they're in there, but they're going to be so discouraged when they feel how their body feels after that one session, as opposed to like, hey, maybe do some sled work for the first just month, just getting them to learn how to use their lower half. Is that something you recognize at times within the fitness space as well?
Oh, for sure. I've seen, all of
spectrum.
That plus more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have to meet people where they're at and then go from there and then point them to the next thing that they need to do. But yeah, you have to start at a very elementary level, and to get them excited about fitness, to want them to come back. Otherwise, yeah, they're going to be super discouraged. They're not going to, want to try. So yeah, that's definitely the first step.
Well, and think about that poor lady that just did back squats for the first time in 20 years.
I've almost.
She's not going to be able to walk down the steps for 4 days. I mean, anyone, I don't care who you are. If you haven't squatted in 10 years,
it's bad.
You put 135 on for us, and you 5 sets of 10, you're not walking for 3 days.
No.
So that poor lady now thinks this is normal, right?
know.
Oh, this is just all these maniacs. They just walk around this store all the time. And you're like, it's never going to be like that ever. You know what I mean? So it does, you know, I totally agree with you. And you don't want to set up an environment that people want to get into the gym and get after it. It's not this big scary thing. But that surely probably does not help the cause when day one we're hitting back squats 5x10.
It's so normal too.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah. Damn. So you recently got into the tactical games. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so it's always been something I wanted to try. And then I finally just like jumped in and did it. So I was back home in Iowa last summer for a couple weeks. And there was tactical games happening probably like an hour from where my family lives. And at that point I didn't have any of my own gear, any of my, like it's handgun and rifle. And so I didn't have either of those. But both my brothers are in the military. And so I borrowed all their gear. So we just drove out there. Not a lot of experience with shooting targets. And so that was different, especially with the elevated heart rate. But I had so much fun. And so then I was pretty hooked. And then I did the team event, I think a month or two later. So the fitness aspect of that event went really well. Like my scores were like the top 1, 2, and then you'd get your shooting cards back and I'd be like, oh, and drop to the bottom. And so like, I would realize I had a lot of work to put in. So my dad has a farm out there. So my brother and I just practiced every day doing like our own drills, running and then shooting and, you know, body weight movements, stuff like that. But it's a lot of fun. It's a cool event. They run it super well, it's super safe. I was impressed.
And is that something you're going to add to your arsenal? Like, are you going to lean harder into that, or will it be kind of more of a do it for fun?
I have quite a few on my race schedule for 2024. I'm going to need to put in a lot of work and time. You do get red dots on your handgun now, which is different. So it was iron sights.
Okay.
So that made it tricky. But now I'm definitely going to lean a little harder into it just because I had so much fun and it went pretty well. So, it's a challenge that I definitely want to take on this next year.
And I know you said you had brothers growing up and they're in the military now. So I'm sure, did you grow up shooting guns at all? Was hunting a part of, like, were you at all comfortable with a handgun or a rifle, or was that something just completely brand new?
Yeah. Growing up in Iowa, that's kind of like the norm. I mean, all my family like hunted white-tailed deer in Iowa. So I was comfortable, but when you put that with fitness and running around and you know, lifting heavy things, it's nothing that I've ever done before. So that was new, but I was definitely comfortable with the whole premise of it.
And I'm assuming, I don't know a ton about the tactical games. I'm assuming it's probably better to approach it the way with your skill set where you're extremely fit in learning to shoot rather than really good at shooting and trying to get the fitness part. Would that be a correct assumption?
Well, like, physically it's probably easier. So like I wasn't dying, right? But some of like the people who win the tactical games all the time, not all of them, but a lot of them, they are just sharpshooters. They're so good at shooting. And so like their fitness might not be, you know, near the level of some of the other competitors, but they can shoot. So that really helps them. But getting started into it, I would say like having a pretty good like endurance fitness background helps you survive the events.
And with everything you've kind of with even now the tactical games and then the GoRuck and the Spartan races, something we've talked a lot. We had a episode, Winning in the Gym. We just kind of talked through our background as athletes, him in the military, of just like what training modalities and programs like we feel like can give you the most bang for your buck in different phases of life, whatever you're trying to achieve. With you having been exposed to so many different modalities, is there one, and I know right now it seems like running is really a focus. I know you said you were in CrossFit, that kind of you would say has the best trickle down to just being overall as fit as possible? And I know this is a loaded question. There's not one right answer, but what modalities that you've exposed yourself to would you say kind of have the most bang for your buck as far as being an overall like aerobic athlete, strength and anaerobic?
Yeah, I mean, I would say running and my capacity and volume in that area, and also like biking really helps me in things like the gym, where if I'm only lifting weights and then I go try to run, that doesn't help me as much. So in all the events and competitions I do, if my aerobic capacity is very high, I will do pretty well. But I would say running has helped a ton, and then strength training too. So there's a lot of runners out there, and even in, Spartan races and obstacle course racing, that don't have the strength and the muscle endurance, and that's kind of their hindrance. And so having my start more so be in weightlifting and strength training like CrossFit, that has kind of helped a ton, where just running alone probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I was gonna politely push back until you said that, because a lot of people, all they do is run. And again, if it's better than nothing. Like if you're gonna do it, of course. But as far as like a well-rounded, individual, even with appearance, I hate to say it, like if you only run, you're gonna have a very specific physique that will look a lot different than someone that runs and then goes hits weights a few days a week. Like that'll be a completely different look, guy or girl, doesn't matter. But the fact that you've, of course, blended both. Now it gets tricky with the ultras, because obviously muscle is heavy, right? And it uses up a lot of oxygen. So I'm sure you've had to find that balance. Especially like with the guys, some of these guys are running, they're like 130 pounds and I'm 240. So like, I'm never going to keep up with those guys in a foot race. Right. So, right. But at some point, if we got to move a boulder at that, Tough Mudder or whatever, they might be sitting there for 2 hours. And then finally the tortoise is going to come up out of the rear. Yeah. Right. So I guess it depends on the event, but it sounds like you've been able to find that balance of, not doing too much strength, work where you've, kind of bulked up and then it's using a bunch of oxygen and it's heavy. But you've been able to have enough strength to kind of have a competitive advantage against those people that are just, all they do is just run hundreds of miles and they never put in the weights.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still way bigger than most ultra marathoners or runners. I show up to, start lines, and I've been told 1,000 times, like, you don't run ultras. Or like, you run ultras? Like, it's always a question because of how I look, that I have muscle. But yeah, I'll take muscle any day. It is a little more tricky when it comes to like 24-hour races, because I'm going to need to fuel a lot more, because runners who don't have muscle, they don't need to feed anything. And so they're not feeding their muscles to keep going, so they can get away with, eating applesauce and baby food, where like I really have to eat like Uncrustables and pizza and things like that to keep me going and keep me fueled. But yeah, I make sure all my clients, no matter if they're just, training for a 5K or running, that they do strength training and they lift weights, because it's very important.
It's funny, I was going to ask, what does nutrition look like on one of those ultras? Like when you say you eat pizza, is that something you have in your bag, or are there stop points where somebody will hand you a piece of pizza that you can eat while you're running? And like how does that vary depending on the race? But as I've always thought through those races, I'm like, damn, you've got to be eating a decent amount of food to maintain that for 24 hours.
Yeah. So for the obstacle course races, the 24-hour ones, it's kind of like NASCAR, where you have a pit crew. So you'll run your lap, whatever mileage that is, and then you'll stop in, they'll feed you, have everything ready to go, and send you out again. For like trail ultra marathons, there's pit stations. So like you make it to, mile 10, there's one, mile 20 or whatever. And then they'll have, all the goodies all lined up. But yeah, fueling is probably the most important. So you can be in really, really good shape and, be set to win it all. But if you don't fuel and you bonk or you break, it's really hard to come back from. So I do a really good job hydrating. That's also very important for ultra marathons. Fueling, I get to like hour 12 and it's like, I don't want anything to eat. And then, by hour 18, it's like, yeah, pizza and everything and anything. So it's really important on those races, like to, stay fueled the whole time. Otherwise, yeah, it's really hard to keep going.
And have you had any kind of big or nagging injuries that you continue to struggle with throughout your career? Because that's what blows my mind too, is that in a 24-hour race, you don't have, I know I'd have a calf tweak or something like that. Like, or do you have anything that's kind of reoccurring for you and that you kind of put a focus on to make sure you're spending time rehabbing and recovering?
I am very blessed that I don't have really any injuries. I mean, you always have kind of like something nagging in a 24-hour race, and it's usually like my feet, just being tired, but that's really it. So yeah, I'm really blessed that throughout my whole career so far, I have had no like injuries or anything that prohibits me from racing and training.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it
As
is.
a guy who literally playing college baseball, tweaked every muscle in my body, I am extremely jealous.
My blessing was I was never fast enough to tweak any muscles, Tony. You're not going to find me pulling a hamstring, man. I don't run fast enough for that. And,
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Idea.
That's right. And I didn't know about the pizza and Uncrustables on these 100-milers, so maybe I just became a customer.
Yeah,
if you're telling me at mile 80 I get a pizza and 5 Uncrustables, I might be in on that.
You have a main line of Miller Lite into your thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Has anyone ever run with a beer helmet? Probably not.
No, but I mean, that's carbs. That would be the worst thing.
Yeah.
I usually go with like Snickers and pickles and things like that too. Like you can basically anything that sits well in your stomach and you can run with, like it's fair game.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, calories are calories, right? It's your body's going to process it so fast. So what's ahead for you? What do the next 5 years look like? You got some goals you want to run down?
Yeah, I mean, I want to continue racing for the next, I don't know how many years until I no longer have fun or enjoy doing it, probably. And keep on like taking on the highest and hardest endurance challenges in the world. That's a goal. There's a couple triathlons I have my eyes set on, a couple more ultra marathons, some of the big ones. So yeah, I have a lot of big race goals. And then I want to continue to build my training business and help people find their love and passion for fitness and moving.
And do you want to elaborate on your training business for the viewers? Free plug opportunity here.
I should promote it.
There you go.
My company's called Nighttime Training, and I train athletes who want to compete in the OCR space like I do, who want to do just trail races. And then I have a lot of clients who just want to get back into the gym or start their fitness journey for the first time. So it's a wide range, and it makes it a lot of fun. So I have a couple programs you can sign up for. They're not customized, but you get access to them 6 days a week. And then I have a lot of one-on-ones as well.
Oh, nice. And is that available through an app too or a website?
You can access it through nighttimetraining.com, and then the programs are through Wodify, and then I have my own program for one-on-ones.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Are there any races that, like, what's the pinnacle race for you that you want to conquer and win? If you had to put one on the list.
Oh, that's hard because there's just so many of them. I mean, some of like the hardest ultra marathons out there, like UTMB, things like that. Like, I would love to podium at one of those for sure.
Are there any that you're afraid of that keep you up at night that you know you're eventually going to have to do, but you're like, damn, that's going to be brutal?
I don't know if any of them keep me up at night. Some of them might make me a little bit nervous or scared, but I think that's a good thing. That's kind of a good motivator. Those would be the big ultras out there, like the Golden Ticket Series and the UTMB and all of those. The one I have coming up is a little nerve-wracking. It's an 8-hour Tough Mudder, and it's in Saudi Arabia, and the payout's very, very big. It's one of the biggest in OCR history. And so that I've been putting in a lot of training and a lot of work for that. 60+ mile weeks, a lot of time in the gym. So we're gunning for that one pretty hard.
Nice.
Yeah. What does the normal like payout look like? Let's use UTMB. That sounds like that's kind of like a tier one. What does the normal payout look like as you kind of go from a bigger one like that to then maybe a medium size to a smaller size?
It kind of just depends on the industry or the brand that's having the race. So like Spartans, in World's Toughest Mudder used to be 10K for first place, and then 5, and then 3 for second and third. But they all just kind of depend. It can be, some of the like Hyrox events. I don't know if you guys heard of that race, but those don't really pay out. And then the World Championships will, to I think 15 or 20,000. So like kind of small. And then there's tons of races that pay nothing. So, except for, some pride and some ego and some bragging rights.
What's that Saudi Arabia one that you just mentioned? How much does that pay out?
First place is 80K. So
nice.
Yeah, that would be ideal. So we're gunning for that.
Do you know Joe DeSena by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, we had him on. The founder of Spartan Race. He was on a podcast.
I saw you guys had him on.
Yeah, he was awesome, and just same wild stories of. I mean, I don't remember the
last
exact
one?
stats, but he did how many Ironmans in like 2 weeks or something, or
7 or
yeah,
something.
it's something crazy. And then he did. I mean, and then he ran the Iditarod,
Yeah.
like the 500-mile leg of that, and just obviously. Y'all are kind of wired similar in wanting to pursue those crazy events, but
There's a screw loose.
yes, yeah, there has to be, but
A little bit.
but in a really cool way. And I think ultimately, what it comes down to is you get addicted to that challenge, right? Because you get in that middle of that race probably, and you're going through those mental demons a little bit, probably to at least to some extent. And then when you finish, you have that triumphant feeling, and that's what gets you coming back, is you want that feeling that you get mini versions of that, I think, when you leave the gym, right? But to a way bigger extreme, you experience that high on a major race, because the low was a lot lower, I think, right? And that's a barrier to entry, right? Not a lot of people are willing to put themselves through that. But only a few select, group of people know what it's like on the other side of it once you're done. So, mad props to you for what you're doing. It's super cool to see kind of how you, in a way, stumbled upon it on a whim. And I think it's a testament though to your mentality, because, and hopefully maybe this is a takeaway for the viewers and us as well. But like, had you not been like, yeah, that 50-mile canyon run, like, that sounds cool, let's do this. Had you been someone that wasn't willing to kind of take a chance and put yourself out there, the trajectory of your life from that point probably would be totally different. Not to say it would have been bad. But I think a lot of us are afraid of failure or embarrassment or any of these other things. But you were just kind of like, screw it, let's go for it. And of course, in a way that mentality could get you into trouble, but I would say that's a fairly risk-free effort, because worst case you stop and you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. But I think a lot of people are deterred from challenge, and rather prefer the status quo. Before you know it, 20 years have gone by, and you don't have much to say for it. So I think for me, that's the coolest part of this whole episode, was that little nugget you snuck in there on how it all started. And that's a testament to your mentality. And I think that's why you've been so successful. So thank you for sharing that. That fires me up.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to, go ahead.
I think a lot of people don't want to experience that like rock bottom or that struggle or that failure. And so it stops them from even wanting to try. My sister just gave me this really good quote. I don't know who it's by, but it goes, you'll learn more lessons at rock bottom or in the valley than you will at the mountaintop. So it's like that struggle, and that I think people can get addicted to as well, of like wanting to try and building and training, because that's the real struggle. And that's where we learn a lot about ourselves. And so training for these races, you might win, you might be at the mountaintop, but the lessons learned were definitely on the way up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I can tell just from a couple of things you said too, that you have an ability to recognize what actually excites you and what brings you a level of enjoyment, and then not being afraid to pursue that, even if on paper it may seem silly. And I don't know specifically about your case, but when you're a teacher and even as a CrossFit coach and stuff with Google, I'm sure there had to be some part of you that was like, wait, endurance race, like maybe you did the first one good, it kind of set your soul on fire, and you're like, wait a second, I like that. So many of us, it's very easy to be like, oh, that's an endurance race, there's no payouts for most of them, like that'd be dumb to do that, as opposed to like, no, that inspired me, I felt a weird connection with it, I'm gonna keep pulling at that thread. That takes courage. And I've heard you say a couple times, well, when Bear asked, like, what are you going to be doing in 5 years? It's like, well, when I'm done enjoying it, I'll move to something else. And I think that's a huge lesson too, is to kind of recognize those pivots within your life, because I do think your internal compass gives you a sense of when you should double down on something, or when it's time to, hey, move towards this that you've been thinking about for the last 3 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. Always listen to the gut. I don't think my gut's ever been wrong. And sometimes I don't listen to it and steers me in and I go a bad direction. But, when I listen to it and I listen to what I love to do, I think things kind of just flow. And, I've been really enjoying this whole process and racing in this industry. And it's opened other doors and allowed me to do things I probably never would have otherwise. So yeah, it's been a fun journey. Cool.
Tone, anything else?
No.
Well, Katie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story. We'll be rooting for you. We wish you the best of luck. I know you got a lot of challenging endeavors ahead of you. So, but you got your head screwed on right. I know you're ready for those moments, and you're going to absolutely crush it. So, and when's the Saudi Arabia race?
End of February.
Okay.
My
all right.
birthday week, actually.
Okay. So that's coming up.
Yeah.
Well, cool. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And for the listeners, make sure you check out nighttimetraining.com. That's KNIGHT, and follow Katie on Instagram. She puts out a lot of really good content. But yeah, we'll be rooting for you. Hope we come back with a W in Saudi Arabia. And thank you so much, Katie.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. It's been fun.